like to introduce our speakers for today, two eminent professors from University of Ibadan. Okay, let me set my video so you can see. Okay, Professor Remi Ayede, who will be our first presenter, is a professor of political institutions, governance, and public policy in the Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. He is also a fellow of the Pan-African Scientific Research Council and current head of Department of Political Science in the University of Ibadan. Professor Remi Ayede will be speaking to us about a very important topic, which is research quality and predatory journals. For those of us that are familiar with the work of Retraction Watch, we know that that's a serious issue that can lead to that leads people to lose their jobs and to go into a lot of trouble. Dr. Temilade Season will be speaking to us about combating plagiarism. She is a development sociologist. She has published her results, her research in several international peer-reviewed journals, including Energy Policy, Feminist Economics, Progress in Development Studies, Technology in Society and World Development. She teaches renewable energy policy at the Center for Petroleum, Energy Economics and Law at the University of Ibadan. You are welcome, professors. Before we begin, I would like to invite Dr. Abiodun to the presentation. Okay, sorry. The representative for the GDN will speak first for a brief remark for 3 minutes. Dr. Daniel Posti, please. Can you hear me, Dr. Daniel?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please. You can give your opening remark, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. So, my name is Daniel Fosi, and I'm representing the Global Development Network, where I work as a research fellow in knowledge systems. And the Global Development Network is an international organization headquartered in New Delhi, India, and it works globally to support social science research on development issues, to inform public debate and decisions through rigorous and original analysis conducted and communicated locally by social scientists that are connected globally as well. And the Global Development Network was born a couple of decades ago with a very ambitious mission to promote social science research capacity everywhere on development, for development, and also as the development. And Global Development Network, friendship or partnership with the National Center for Technology Management, NACETEM, might have been started before, but it has been formally strengthened by the GDN's or Global Development Initiative, an innovative program called Doing Research, which the NACETEM research team has been implementing it in Nigeria from the period between 2018 to the present. The Doing Research program aims to assess systematically how the features of national research system impact the capacity to produce, diffuse, and use quality social science research to the benefit of social and economic development. It does so through its standard methodology called Doing Research Assessment. And with this Doing Research Assessment, we have currently implemented the program in 15 countries, the latest including El Salvador. And for the past 20 months beyond Nigeria, we worked in Bolivia, Myanmar, Indonesia, and Venezuela. So there are 3 things I would like to mention about the Doing Research Assessment as a standard methodology for Doing Research program. The first one is that the Doing Research Assessments focus on the national research system. This is because we believe that the range of opportunities and the challenges social sciences face, whether in terms of quality, equity, or access to resources, or or influence on decision makers are defined by what happens within national boundaries. This is in spite of the critical importance of regional or global connections. We define a research system as the interplay of three functions: production, diffusion, and uptake. In other words, we are not interested in publication counts, but in whether the research system has the capacity to produce rigorous knowledge and how this knowledge travels and who is going to access it. And the third is about, we see the doing research assessment, what NASATEM will briefly present today from their DRI report is a starting point for stimulating discussions on research policy in which independent and the local research institutions have a voice. Hence our choice. Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead,
Hello?
Daniel. We can hear you.
Go ahead.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
So saying the third aspect of doing research is about, we see it as a starting point for stimulating discussions on research policy in which independent and the local research institutions have a voice. Hence, our choice is to have local principal investigators and researchers and to connect them across the countries in a network where teams learn from each other and feed their comparative knowledge into their national debates. So with this note, we thank NASATEM for inviting GDN to participate in this webinar series. And we also extend our sincere gratitude to the team. These webinars that NASATEM have planned are a great example of how to use the kind of knowledge the DRI produces to advance our research capacity. And today's webinar on research quality, plagiarism, and the predatory journals is timely and relevant given the increase of researchers and academic journals, which a great number of them operate in deceptive research and publishing practices, and thus pose a global threat to the quality of research and researchers. Understanding research quality control measures, nature, and the repercussions of predatory publishing is of great significance to researchers, authors, and the users of research, including policymakers and practitioners. So we are confident that we'll learn a great deal on this topic from the wealth of expertise of our workshop facilitators. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you for this wonderful remark. The next will be a presentation by Dr. Abiodun. Are you there, Doctor?
Yes, I am here.
Yes. So please, can you share your screen with us and give us your presentation?
I'm doing that right away. So I believe you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can. I can, at least.
Okay. Well, if you can, I believe everybody can. Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do to get us started is to give an overview of what the research project has been about. This was a project that started a couple of years back, precisely about 2 years ago. And we literally walked the length and breadth of Nigeria. As Daniel mentioned, this study was not conducted only in Nigeria. And the study looked at three critical components of the social science research system. The first one being social science research production, and the next one being the diffusion or dissemination of social science research. And then we went on to assess the uptake, that is the extent to which results from social science research is used in policy. So what I'm going to be presenting, because our webinar today is focused on the production component of what we did, which informs the two topics that we're going to be listening to our guest speakers speak about in the next couple of minutes. So what I'm going to be presenting is the results we have in the aspect of social science research production in Nigeria. So this is the research team. Well, here you see me in the top, the top corner there, the top right-hand corner. And the rest of the team includes Mr. Ongofinyang, who may have been in touch with several of you at one time or the other, Dr. Ayong Awal, Dr. Maruf Soni, Dr. Mangayomi Watokbe, and Mr. Uteyine Shonga Yusuf. So now I'll start by giving a broad overview of how we approached this study. We adopted mixed methods, which you might agree with me, it's a very good way to do something like this. When you want to assess systems, one of the most appropriate ways to do it is to not just look after numbers, not just go after numbers, but also try to understand why the numbers are the way they are. So we combined desk research with detailed key informant interviews and also used some basic bibliometrics numbers together with a comprehensive survey of the system. Now, there are 4 categories of actors within the social science research system as we mapped it. The higher education institutions are responsible for producing both human resources and research results in the social science research system. And in Nigeria, this particular sector is heavily dominated by the universities. There's 170 of them, and we sampled 50. We sampled from 50 of these universities. The civil society organizations and the private sector function mainly as gatekeepers between the production and uptake of research. And what we mean by gatekeepers is that they function as a form of conduit.
Sorry, Dr. Abiodu, let me just interrupt you a little bit and call the attention of our participants. Please, our participants, we can hear your speaker if you don't mute it. So we can hear what is happening on the background. Can you please all mute and only allow Dr. Abiodu to talk? Please, the participants. I think, let me find that. Okay, you can continue, Dr. Abiodu.
Okay, thank you. So by gatekeepers, we mean that they act as a conduit through which research results flow to translate into tangible, as you like, products and processes, policies, and action on the ground. So they function mainly in the dissemination and uptake of research. And government and funding agencies function in setting the agenda for research. So this includes government ministries, it includes organizations that play a role in defining the scope of what gets done and also in allocating resources to social science research. We identified 1,580 civil society organizations and private sector organizations, of which we sampled 35, and 75 GFAs, of which we sampled from 45. So this is how our sample looked like in the end. We can say with a fair amount of confidence that this is representative of the social science research system in Nigeria. And so to provide a bit of a context on the basis of some of the things we found, I mean, between 2017 and 2019, we did a quick comparison of social science research production in terms of number of publications in the disciplinary area of social science, broadly defined. In Nigeria, between 2017 and 2019, we counted a total of 6,646 publications on SciMago. SciMago is a well-known bibliographic database, but comparatively, in South Africa, we counted 22,451. Now, you will begin to see why this is interesting for us when you consider that as of that time, Nigeria had 170 universities. In fact, now we're looking at about nearly 200 universities because an additional 20 universities were licensed about a month ago. And now, the system that has a population of nearly 201 million people, about 170 universities as of the end of 2019 produced only 6,600 social science publications, compared with the South African system where you have about 59 million people, only 45 universities, and just about 22 and over 22,400 social science publications. So one of the questions we need to begin to ask is, could this be a problem of poor visibility of the volume of what is being produced in Nigeria, but just that the Nigerian social science research system is not productive at all. And this is, you will agree with me, an important question that needs to be asked. So we looked more behind these numbers, these contextual numbers, to try to understand what could be going on behind the scenes. Well, we started by looking at the people involved, human resources for social science research in Nigeria. The estimates we have are not entirely precise, but they give us a fair representation of the size of the system. Between 6,400 and 32,000 social science researchers were working in Nigeria as of 2009. That was the latest estimate available to us. And this is in the range of between 10 and 50% of all researchers in the country. Around 30% of this number has a PhD. Comparatively, looking at from other countries, this figure is fairly low. It's not entirely bad within the context of sub-Saharan Africa, but globally, it's not clearly not good enough. And most of concentrated in universities. There are comparatively fewer researchers in other aspects of the system, government and funding agencies you find in universities. And there's a huge gender disparity for every one woman social science researcher. So these figures begin to show us some of the areas where the system needs attention. And in terms of funding, as of 2009, gross expenditure on research and development in all disciplines was just 0.2% of GDP in Nigeria. Now, what does this tell us? Remember that this is expenditure on research and development across all disciplinary areas. So if we take a share of that 0.2%, that's what is going to social science research. Clearly, that number is very, very small. On this chart, you will see that Nigeria commits one of the lowest figures to one of the lowest shares of GDP to research and development in general, not to speak of social science research specifically. Even at that, most of this funding comes from government, 96%. 65% of this funding that comes from government goes to universities, and only 10% of that goes to social science research. So if we take a percentage, it then goes that just about 0.02% of all expenditure on R&D goes to social science research in Nigeria. And the individual social science researcher in Nigeria is relatively poorly funded. A maximum of $31,000 goes to one social science researcher. That's including salaries and wages. So this already begins to put into context some of the funding challenges that may exist in the Nigerian social science research system. But we have to admit that some of these figures do not necessarily capture everything that goes on within the system. There's a huge amount of foreign funding that goes to individual researchers, which are not necessarily recorded in the institutional funding repository. But be that as it may, looking at the figures as we have them, it puts Nigeria not in a sufficiently competitive position for a country of the size of Nigeria. And we also assessed research support for the production of social science research. Encouragingly, 98% of all social science research publications in Nigeria are peer-reviewed. You will agree with me that peer review is one of the best ways by which the scientific community takes care of its own quality. So it's the best internal quality assessment procedure there is as of today. And so only 2% of every social science research publication that emerges from Nigeria has not been peer reviewed in the period that we conducted this study, which is good. But then all of this research is being carried out in a context of poor infrastructure. Anyone who works in Nigeria can easily relate with instability in electricity, instability in internet connection, and the university system in particular struggles with access to anti-plagiarism software. Most of the researchers we spoke with told us that they could not, their university does not give access to anti-plagiarism software, and this is beyond the purse of each individual researcher. And administrative responsibilities tend to be distracting, and on average, the researchers spend just about a third of their time on research, And if you take that together with the fact that there is poor systemic coordination in the sense that there's no clear agenda at the national level or an individual, a single organization that coordinates the research agenda, it becomes easy to see why there are weak incentives for quality research in the Nigerian system. So what do all of these figures tell us in terms of how to make the system better? We think first and foremost that there needs to be a demand for high quality research. The emphasis during promotion and tenure assessment on just the sheer number of publications that the researcher has produced does not seem to be good enough. Demanding quality has a strong signaling effect to, it pushes researchers to want to do more. And there's the need to increase local funding for research. Foreign funding is good, but there's a way that foreign funding has an agenda setting motive as well. And such agenda may not necessarily be tied to local reality. So there's the need to improve local funding, particularly for social science research, and funding would go not just into research, but also in infrastructure and the provision of research support. So some of these issues are going to be picked up by our guest speakers today, Professor Ayede, who is going to talk about research quality, and Dr. Sheson is going to talk about how to deal with plagiarism. So with those thoughts, I want to hand you back over to the moderator, who is then going to lead us on in today's webinar. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abiodun. It's a very interesting findings you have there. I hope people join the discussion and ask questions by dropping them in the chat box. So if you, the participants, if you have any questions, Dr. Abiodun, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll read them later when I don't have any questions for you now from the participants. So I think without much ado, I'll call Professor Uremi. Are you there? Can you hear us? It's Professor Ayede.
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So,
you can see me now.
Okay, yeah, we can see you. So please,
Okay,
you have you have our full attention to tell us about research quality and what we are. Thank you very much. You can share your screen and. Yeah, you can see it.
So I'll be speaking on quality research and predatory journals. And then to put my discussion in context, I will provide an outline of how I'm going to go about it. In the meantime, I say good afternoon to everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I hope that our discussion today will be very beneficial for us as individuals and for the research community in Nigeria in general. As Adebayo was talking, he made reference to the research contribution of Africa to global research. And he emphasized the very limited number of quality publications that's coming from Africa, emphasizing the fact that the majority of them, we have that challenge, and it is our responsibility as members of the research community to begin to think through these challenges. And as I said, the challenges vary in Nigeria as we move from one research institute to another, from one university to another. But in general, there are certain specific issues that affect the quality of research, which we also look at. And one important development we also talk about is the entrance of the internet, social media, and the challenges they pose to quality, which leads also to the issue of predatory journals. This discussion, of course, we examine the quality of research, the nature and characteristics in terms of the science, in terms of the issue of evidence, in terms of ethics, in terms of writing, and also in terms of publishing and uptake. And when we talk about publishing and uptake, that's where the issue of predictive journals become very important. And you cannot talk about predictive journal without also making some clarifications about open access journals, because sometimes people think all open access journals are predatory journals, and therefore and talk about how this affects the quality of science and research that we do. Quality research. What makes quality research? Many of us are initiated into the research profession, either as graduate students or as people who are enrolled for PhD, and in the process we are exposed to the logic and methods of science. And through most of the time apprenticeship approach, we all think that by graduating with a postgraduate degree, we have become equipped to carry out research. This is only partly true because there are different levels of competencies in doing research. And research is one area where we learn by doing. And if you have a degree, an advanced degree, and you abandon your trade for a while, you might quite easily be de-skilled. That's why it's important to always remember that the methods and logic of science improves by the day, which means that there are new ways of doing things, there are new concepts, and we have to be up. And now, what is particularly very important is that there are laid down procedures and methods that we use in carrying out research. And probably as this series of seminars go on, we might have a chance to look at the various methods. And they are very essential that we satisfy the requirements of these methods when we do research. They enable us carry out effective and effective. In other words, we don't just apply these methods haphazardly. We have to apply them as professionals so that we can develop the required level of confidence and reliability on the outcome of our research. Now, a very important element of quality research that cannot be emphasized is the importance of evidence. When we talk about method, what we're in fact talking about is that if we have a research question, we have a research problem that we want to solve, we not only need evidence to solve it, we not only apply scientific methods to acquire data in order to generate the kind of evidence that we need. Our evidence must be robust. They must be evidence that are reliable. They must be evidence that are relevant to the questions that we are seeking to answer or the issues that we want to address. So robust evidence is very important to quality research. In other words, when we are talking about evidence, we also try to distinguish between anecdotal ideas or facts from systematic evidence. We try to remove our biases and ensure that there is clear connection. We establish the connection between our conclusion and our propositions through the means of evidence. And if evidence is not robust, our claims cannot be dependent, and they will not likely to be reliable or valid. And that's why it's important. But in the process of determining which method you use, how to apply the methods, and how to develop, generate evidence and interpret them and apply them, we need to pay attention to another very important aspect of quality research, which is ethics. In other words, we are not expected to carry out our research the way we want. We have to pay attention to ethical issues, the proper conduct that is expected of us in doing research. We have to respect persons, we have to respect privacy, we have to uphold the highest standard of research. And this is very important when we talk about quality research. Beside the issue of ethics and the methods and logic of scientific approach, we need to also be able to communicate our ideas. And when we talk about communication, we are talking about engagement as well, because especially in the social sciences, when we do research, we're interested in getting the research to affect life, to transform society, to uphold certain values. And because of that, our ability to communicate is very essential for quality research. And there are several dimensions to communication in research. The first has to do with engagement. When you want to do a research that is policy focused, for instance, to what extent do you engage with stakeholders? What skills do you need? How do you engage with them in order to be able to effectively define the problem in a manner that whatever is the outcome of your research be useful to not only the scientific community, but also the policy community. Communication is also about your quality of writing. What is your capacity in terms of written expression in the language of research? That is, especially in Nigeria where we use English, you need to be able to be proficient English, and you need to develop the personal and interpersonal skills that you require to engage. And then in terms of that's where we are going to be because if you are able to express yourself, capture your observations, represent effectively written form. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you now.
That was an interference.
It's been muted, so we can continue. Prof.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, Prof. We can hear you.
I hear you.
That's how important your ability to communicate is in terms of research. And what I'm saying in all of this is that science is a systematic process of generating knowledge, and that process must be observed in research for you to achieve quality research. It is not that you do it when you like, or when the resources are available, or when the environment is conducive. The professional ethical requirement is that you observe the methods of science or the method of your discipline in trying to do research or generate evidence. And the bottom line is really that you cannot afford to do things haphazardly. And that is why every discipline takes time to introduce future researchers on the methods and logic of doing research. And I say this with all sense of seriousness because it is actually the process through which we are initiated into whatever discipline that we have chosen in terms of research. So for us to achieve quality research, we must be faithful to our calling as professionals. And that is why the various universities, training academies, and if you look around Africa today, you find that there are so many methods institutes that are emerging. We have the IFE Methods Institute, we have the PASGA Methods Institute, we have the Methods Institute in the UI Postgraduate School. We have so many methods institutes evolving across the world. And if you look at each of the disciplines, you'll find that there are global methods institutes because you have to be acquainted with the methods of doing research in the field for you to be able to carry out research effectively and to achieve what we mean by quality research. In other words, research that observes scientific process, has robust evidence, valid logic, and in which the requirements of ethics are observed and the research is effectively communicated. Now, there are consequences if one does not observe the ethics and methods required of the researcher. And there can be a number of implications arising from that. And it is not far-fetched. It is, in fact, historical that certain researches have been conducted without observance of both the required methods and ethical requirements of studies. And a number of them have led to very dire consequences. Oftentimes we hear about the Nazi doctor experiments, the Tuskegee experiment. These are experiments that you can find on the internet. If you Google them on YouTube, you will see the live consequences, the very unspeakable consequences of such researches, which have led to both physical and psychological harm on the people that were used for this study. Now we talk about scientific method, and we also talk about being unbiased, checking all your prejudices and the stereotypes that often stand in the way of rationality and clear scientific process. And you see that prejudices and stigma sometimes inform some of the anthropological studies and studies that were done during the colonial period. And many of them have had very adverse consequences on not just the victims of the research, that is the respondent, but also even those who conducted the research. So other harms that you can arise from unethical conduct of research, which may lead to lowering or destroying the quality of research, include loss of privacy, a discomfort that it can cause to other people. And it's important that to know that in this research, these consequences, as I said, it's not just on the victims or the respondents of research, but in the entire research community. Because as researchers, we belong to a scientific community that creates knowledge for society and knowledge that will be consumed by society. And for instance, we in the social sciences might think that what we do have little or no consequences for community, but that's not very true. In fact, we have a lot of things to lose by not doing quality research. And when you look at researches, for instance, that are designed to influence society, to affect the values of society, to transform society, to improve the quality of life for society, if they are not properly done, it can cause great harm to such communities. And the consequences of such research can be very grave. We also have, when you have poor quality research all over, the consequences that there will be loss of credibility and faith in science. And we see that in the rise of all the right-wing ideologies, the various conspiracy theories that you find that is ruling the airwave in the internet all over the world. people tend to take those things more seriously than they take science. And as we speak in the world we are today, there's actually a contest between science and alternative, or what people talk about these days about alternative truths. You know, we are in a moment where truth itself is under question, and this is likely because of the loss of credibility and faith in science. And there's a lot of attempt now to invest on this problem, and so it has negative consequences also if you want to engage policymakers, because if they don't have faith in science, if they don't believe that evidence matters, now if we and as a result of our bad research, then we have serious problem engaging in research, and that's important for us as investigators to know that something has to be done to deal with, you know, those who don't care about the quality of their research. And you can see that in many places, some of them are brought shame to themselves. Many articles these days have been retracted, and there are so many challenges arising from poor quality and unethical research. And as we know, in the world of today, people have become very wary of these unethical practices. And if we are not careful, we can become victims by facing the consequences of our actions, like loss of job and jail for some people. Can see the former Delhi Vice Chancellor from India who ran into trouble, and then the Hungarian president as well. All of these stories you can find by merely checking on the internet. Beyond that, one of the very important points I've made about robust or quality research is the idea of communication. And one of the means through which we communicate research is through publication. And for the scientific community, the prime instrument for communication is not just books, but it's actually journals, because journals undergo processes of peer review, and they are considered a very important outlet for scientific research. And all the scientific community is perpetually engaging with research. And that's why you find that with journals, that's why you find that journals, there are attempts to categorize them, to rank them in terms of impact factor, in terms of a number of indicators. And so people take journals very seriously. In fact, in my university, for instance, if you are going to be promoted, they will tell you that between journals and every other forms of publication that you have, journals must make 60% of your submission. And so journals are very, very important, not just to the scientific community, but to the research institutions, to the universities. And that's why they place high premium on it. And we are all eager to publish in journals. Now, that's where the issue of open access and predatory journals become very important. The first question we need to clarify would be something like, what is predatory journals, and are all open access journals predatory? These are very important questions that we need to address. First, I will start by saying that open access journals are journals that are freely available, either mostly through the journal website, because they are often in e-copies. And as such, they are widely accessible. People they don't have to pay for them. Once they Google or log into the journal website, they can easily download those journals free of charge. And these are open access journals. And because of the attempt to equalize access to scientific knowledge, there are movements, promoting access to journals, especially because if you look at countries of the world, they are unequal. As the earlier speaker said, there are some countries are poor, research infrastructure are not firmly established in our society, especially in Africa, many African countries. In Nigeria, of course, we know sometimes without the support of foundations across the world, we are not even able to access journal websites in our universities and research institutes. And because of that, people are promoting open access so that more and more people can have access to very important scientific journal publications. And as a result of that, there has been a proliferation of open access journals across the world. And people tend to then think that because traditional journals are not open, journals that are open to everyone to access are therefore considered either substandard or cheap. But as I have said before, the actually movement to increase access of the less privileged part or disadvantaged part of the world to scientific knowledge. And this open access movement is part of that, and we need to contextualize it as such. However, in that same environment,
Oh,
I think we.
Mr. Moderator, I think we may have lost Prof.
Okay, yeah, because I
think so.
For a moment, I thought it was me. I was checking what went wrong. So I bet a lot of our participants were wondering the same thing.
I think we may have lost him actually.
I think he lost his connection, I guess.
Yes. So we wait for him to rejoin, please.
Exactly.
Yes, he's joining us. He's trying to join us again now.
10 minutes. I think you can agree with me. The discussion is getting very interesting. Yeah, his presentation is getting very interesting. I'm getting so engrossed in it, and he lost it.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Back.
Sometimes. He's not yet back. He's still trying to join.
Okay.
This goes back to one of the issues that we were.
Yes. I was about
to go ahead, Dr. Isa, go ahead, please.
Yes, so there was this paper that was shared in our NYA group. The title of the paper is Why I Publish in Predatory Journals and Why You Should. So that generated a lot of discussion amongst the members, with a lot of people voicing their views about what a predatory journal is and what an open access journal is. And I think I rightly pointed out that what the author failed to do was to differentiate between, okay, Prof is back, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll let you finish, Prof, before I comment.
He's back, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So I was making that distinction between open access and predatory journals. And I've tried to say that, that once a journal is open access, does not mean that it's predatory. And there are all kinds of definitions about predatory journals that you find in the literature, because I think there's a growing number of literature that focus on predatory journals. Some of them talk about predatory journals as, I think the most important factor that they use to define predatory is the fact that many of them don't have peer review. Many of them charge a fee, and many of them are not set up in established institutions. Many of them are designed just to make money. And apart from predatory journal, I've also managed what we call predatory conferences, you know, and I think a lot of narratives from individual experiences can shed light on that. But in general, we can say that many of these predatory journals, they make bogus claims about, you should go to their website, they're likely to tell you a lot of things about their impact factors, how they are listed in one metrics or the other, and so on and so forth. And they carry out all kinds of names. And the interesting part of it is that many of them publish without peer review, and you can, some publish every month, some publish, you can pay now, submit your paper and publish now. Now there is a gray area around this because efforts have been made to draw a list of journals that are considered predatory, because to be predatory is to say that the journal is substandard, to say that what is published there is questionable, to say that it has not observed, you know, the peer review process, and to say that it's designed, you know, for other purposes other than promoting scientific knowledge. And people don't encourage scholars, serious scholars, to publish in predatory journals. But as I said before, there are gray areas. There are journals that started as open access, but have built reputations over the years. And that is why many of the lists that you find concerning journals that are considered predatory are often questionable because of this possibility of transition from a journal that is considered predatory into one that is of repute. But I know that across the world, if you are in any discipline, you would be exposed through the process of your training to the very highly respected and top-notch journals in your discipline. So the question of resort to predatory journals is not just a question of ignorance. It's not just a question of desire to contribute quality research. Sometimes it's because people have tried some very highly reputed journals and they have been turned down again and again. They have lost confidence in themselves or in their ability to ever get published in those frontline journals. Some even argue that some journals are discriminatory between North and South, that if you are from Africa, for instance, in some journals, you are likely to be discouraged. Some will even say that there's an international division of labor, that Africans are supposed to provide empirical data, while the theorizing is supposed to be done from the West. So there are all of these arguments, especially by feminists, by post-colonial scholars, and all of that. So there are this dimension to the question of publishing. So
sorry, Prof. Sorry if I may interrupt. I don't know how many more slides you have to share with us, because I see that your time is.
Oh, okay. This is actually
about 4 to 5 minutes.
That's excellent. This is actually the last slide, because what I'm trying to talk about, I can talk by not looking at these slides. So those are the debates around the predatory journal. So what I'm saying in effect is to say that you can get all kinds of argument that you want, but the fact remains that even institutionally, for instance, the Nigerian University Commission recognizes that some journals are predatory, and they actually have a list of journals that should not be used for the purpose of promotion in Nigerian universities. That's one, but whether this list is observed or even put into use when universities are considering promotion is another thing completely. I also know that in some universities, the universities themselves generate a list of journals that they think should constitute what they will use for the purpose of recognition and promotion. This list, of course, cannot be static. So they keep putting some journals in and others out. And there are usually controversies about the status of that list. This, of course, brings me to the whole question of regulation, which is what I've already started talking about, that there have been attempts to regulate predatory journals, use of them, and to discourage people from publishing in such journals, because it is believed that what I've outlined earlier concerning the requirement of quality research are often not observed in many of these predatory journals. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think you did justice to the topic. It was succinct and very enlightening. When you your internet broke off, I think I started making a point. There was this paper published by, I think it was Professor Kett from University of Texas. And the title of the paper is very catchy. It's Why I Publish in Predatory Journals and Why You Should Too. So it created a lot of debate amongst Nigerian academic members about what makes up a predatory journal and what makes up an open access journal. So I think you did justice to the topic, because with this, I think all the participants have now, because I had one question that I will ask. Please, those of you who posted their questions will at least probably wait for us after the presentation by our other speaker, then we will maybe ask your questions. But this is in line with your question, which you have already answered, which journals, he said, Daniel Hussein said, it means journals that are for free are predatory journals. I'm always confused to differentiate between the two. I think from the prof's presentation, I think Daniel will have to be very clear about what a predatory journal is and what an open access journal is. Thank you very much, Prof. Please hang around with us if we have any question for you after Dr.'s presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you. For those who are just joining us, our next speaker is Dr. Temilade Season. She's from the same university as Professor Ayede, who just concluded his presentation, University of Ibadan. She's a developmental sociologist. She has published her research in international peer-reviewed journals, and her area of research includes energy policy, feminist economics, progress in developmental study, technology in society, and world development. She's now teaching with the Renewable Energy Policy Center at the University of Ibadan. Prof, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I can see you. Okay, so please, if you can, you have.
And yes, I am trying to share my screen. Yes.
Yes.
Can you see my screen now?
There. Yes,
wait, let me just put it on slideshow. Great. Okay.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. So thanks very much, Dr. Issa. I've been asked to speak on this really big topic, big in the sense that it is highly consequential. You know, so I'm just going to, and it's broad as well. So I'm just going to try to give like a broad overview. And at the end, naturally, I have a list of references, which are really just starting points into, you know, people who want more information going into those sources, you know, to try and discover more. So thanks again to the organizers for, you know, inviting me on the back of this really, really ambitious and interesting study on doing social science research in Nigeria. Social science often doesn't get this kind of attention or recognition. So thanks very much. Right. So combating plagiarism. I mean, combating, when I saw the title, I was like, oh my God, this is a very militant word. But I don't think that that's overstretching the issue, because I think that combating is probably right in the sense that, you have this quote and unquote evil trend or phenomenon, and you want to fight it. So really taking a militant stance, on the issue is, I think, maybe not overflogging the issue. So I want to start with this really widely, hopefully widely known quote, originally attributed to Isaac Newton, I don't know, centuries ago now, at least decades ago, who says, if I can see further, it is because, or if I have seen further, it's because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. And he was actually saying this in a research sense, in a scientific research sense. And it's really important, I think, to start from this, from this point. This, by the way, is for people who use Google Scholar. This used to be, I think, still is their byline, for a long time. And it's this nice quote from Coffin et al. Essentially, broadening this idea that the reason why maybe people see citing or using other people's work as maybe something to be not so forthcoming about is actually this fundamental denial of the need to build on other people's work, right? On work that has gone before. And just to say, in life, but especially in academia, like this is the whole foundation of knowledge. So no one expects anyone to come with some fully formed idea. Necessarily innovation research builds on, the work of others that have gone before. And so here in square brackets, it says researchers. In the original, it was students, but I just wanted to broaden this to a broader audience to say that it is really important to understand that this is the fundamental, and in fact, if you do a piece of, I don't know, even if it's a first year essay or something that does not actually show that you have consulted a range of sources and showing by citing and by appropriating, then actually you have fallen short, of the standard of academic research. I often tell my students at CPL, like, when I give you an essay question, I'm not asking you for an opinion piece. I'm not asking you for, an opinion piece. I'm asking you to actually go around and summarize and synthesize, the work of peer-reviewed, authors that have gone before on this topic. And so this really is the foundation. So once we kind of understand this and accept this, and it actually takes a load off, because you recognize that you're supposed to be adding, just like the latest in this long line of researchers on this tradition that has gone before. And so making that obvious is very much a thing of pride, as opposed to a thing to shy away from. And so, yes, what exactly is this P word, i.e. plagiarism? It's in quote marks there. What is it and why? I mean, I think my training as a sociologist makes me very interested in questions of why. And some of us may know or may not know the whats of plagiarism. I think that's a bit more straightforward. I think the whys are more, they require a bit more of like reflection. And really it's essentially the use of words, other people's words, ideas, and ideas is a key one. Even if you don't use the exact same words, but the ideas that you're reproducing have not been properly attributed to their primary source, then you're essentially claiming it as your own. And it does violate, universally accepted principles of, IPR. And it is fraud. It's calling a spade a spade. It is fraud. It's cheating, stealing, however, it's misrepresentation. You know, so on many levels, it's just really undesirable and outrightly wrong, even from a moral perspective. So from the excellent report that you know, Dr. Ebeteko and the team you know, came out with on this project. So I like this actually from the infographic. I think that's where I got this from. This past formal ethics, where it was saying, you know, where they were saying that this is an issue in Nigerian workplaces, research institutes, wherever, and universities. I don't know how many people have seen, like there's this weird thing in Nigeria where I go, I literally can read the same news item, like word for word, you know, in an online newspaper. I can read it like 10 times the same day, the same piece of news, the same title, the same everything, the same words. And nobody has credited anybody for the story. And you begin to wonder, okay, so what exactly is going on here? What was original source? What was the, and this is such a prevalent practice, just world sector-wide, but in the context of research, I think let's just narrow the discussion to the research context and universities in particular, which, as we saw from the report, actually account for the highest percentage of social science research in Nigeria. And I think just sort of to speak to universities now, there's a lot of university representatives here. So maybe just taking a moment to look into the mirror and just acknowledging that actually students, you know, people that come out of those institutions are really quite simply not taught, or at least not taught to the extent that they should be, the principles or the basics of what constitutes this violation of IPR or plagiarism. The people are not taught explicitly or even implicitly in terms of, you know, feedback, giving feedback on pieces of writing that, you know, students maybe submit to you, and then letting them realize, you know, this is not the way that it is done. So no, we don't pay nearly as much attention. You know, I think faculty first and then students to letting people know what the basics are. And, you know, this last point on this slide about a failure, this manifesting or being a manifestation of failure to think critically and creatively. Now, those are two big words, especially in the social sciences, but actually for all of education, for all of research, all of science, critical thinking is indispensable. It is should be the whole point, you know, of an education. And I think when you see a piece of work that doesn't, that is basically just regurgitating what someone else has done, then you realize that this person has probably not put any kind of effort into even understanding what, you know, they were reading, much less being critical, you know, about, you know, and saying, okay, let me not swallow this hook, line, and sinker. Let me see if there, you know, if this matches even with my own reality sometimes, or even with, you know, what other people have said on the topic. You know, so that's where you see that on critical, on thinking reproduction. You know, the point about creativity, as we go down a couple of slides down the line, I think I have this slide on why creativity matters, and why, you know, it doesn't only apply to what is traditionally known as the creative arts, or you know, music, or, you know, whatever the creative, the sort of traditionally creative fields, but also to academia and to research. Okay, so this is just an illustration to show, and I said two poles, that's my rather weak attempt at alliteration, but what I meant was two extremes, you know, of plagiarism, which is on the one end, you have people who don't know. Quite frankly, I think a lot of the student population, possibly researcher, this is a very unscientific, I haven't done any poll, you know, but actually don't know what constitutes, at least in my experience, you know, teaching students, don't know what constitutes plagiarism. Some don't know that they don't know, you know, and at the other extreme, we have people who may know or may know at least that is something to take seriously or to find out more about or to do some work on, but they don't care. They don't care, maybe because they have been able to get away with it for such a long time, or the system, this project has done a lot of work around just researching the system, the whole system on which research takes place, and the system. In the system, it's not as the system maybe doesn't penalize people enough, or even rewards, maybe more like rewards good behavior. So if you didn't plagiarize, what rewards would you get in return? Or if you didn't plagiarize as much, what rewards would you get in return? So that's sort of the status quo. Again, there's a broad range. This is by no means doesn't necessarily capture every dimension of the issue. So again, from the report, actually interesting quotes. I think the report is, as you can see, I've literally lifted many things out of it with appropriation. To say that, so they found that researchers, again, in the survey, are least satisfied. I think Dr. Gbotokun cited or quoted this when he was speaking earlier. Software for both plagiarism and data analysis. However, more universities, especially private ones, prioritize software, especially anti-plagiarism. And this is great, but in my mind, I frame this as, this being another manifestation of the age in which we are, the age of Gen Z researchers who are, Gen Z is, I don't know, people born mid-90s, between mid-90s and mid-2010s. That is the most digitally native generation ever, like they grew up with the internet. And so this whole idea, like the selfie generation, where everything is about software, everything is about how you can automate things, how you can basically replace people with robots, which is what software is in many ways. So this shows what universities are trying to proactively do, But interestingly, like just a couple of sentences down, the same, instead of citing the same response from one of the interviews, basically saying, actually, so this trend of getting more anti-plagiarism software in, coupled with the requirement for publication in Scopus listed, so really, high-ranking journals, or at least peer-reviewed, and not non-predatory, before graduation, helps to ensure the emergence of high-quality researchers and research output. And that emphasis is mine. It's mine because that is really fundamentally the starting point. That is the crux of the matter. I think that taking the phenomenon of plagiarism out of the context of research and writing, that it occurs in, maybe slightly misses the point. And so the idea is, before you even get to the software, how are researchers, how are students prepared to do high quality research, to do high quality writing, which are some of the things that Professor Ayede just talked about in the previous slide. And this is where I think that in the first instance, a lot of the energies of students and faculty alike need to be concentrated first and foremost. Like I was saying earlier, there's some level of ignorance, shall I say, varying levels of ignorance at different levels as to what to do, what needs to be done, and how to do it right. And so, yes, just a note on writing. Obviously, this is
Hello?
Sorry, I went off for a while. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes, we
Yes,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you now. Yes.
Am I still sharing my screen?
Not yet. If you would just do it again.
Right. Okay, I think that's my cue to maybe speed up so that this doesn't be off on me. Okay. Think it's better? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so so essentially, plagiarism is the easy path. You know, writing is the road, you know, less traveled in a sense, in the sense that, you know, it's actually much harder. And I think in many ways, especially for those who maybe know but don't care, you know, that's actually the motivation for plagiarizing, because I mean, it's just easier to do that, right? To do the copy and paste. You know, but actual writing and engaging with the material is an iterative multi-stage. So I put dot process, you know, I put dot in square brackets there because, you know, honestly, I could think of like, I don't know, 10 more adjectives, you know, non-flattering adjectives to put in that space to be like, you know, writing is just hard work. It's just really this hard slog. And you have this broadly 4 or 5 levels where you are again, remember from the beginning slide, you know, summarizing and synthesizing. So like what exactly does that entail? So you have a subject, a paper, you know, something to write, an essay, and you're reading around the literature, obviously at, I don't know, post-grad, especially level, you have some previous knowledge, you know, that is maybe tacit that you can draw upon. And then, so, you know, sort of pre-writing is just getting yourself into that whole space of engaging with current material, and then sort of drawing on, you know, what you've sort of known before. And free writing, I mean, this is not cast in stone, but, you know, free writing is basically just starting by putting everything out there. Now, a note on this, this pre-writing stage is basically literally the reading and say free writing stage. And, you know, reading, you know, existing papers, there is a temptation, and I'm saying this because, you know, we are all here like in the same space of research and writing. There is a temptation to, you see this like really lovely quote or this really lovely paragraph or this, I don't know, couple of paragraphs that are like, you know, oh my God, there is no way I could even literally put this in a better way than these authors have done. And so you sort of copy verbatim and paste onto your rough sheet or draft or whatever, and say, oh, you know, with the intention that you're going to revise it later, or you know, rephrase it later, or, you know, something. There is no law per se, you know, against that, but just to say that be very, very, very wary of doing that if possible, to every extent possible. Avoid that direct copying and pasting, just because it might end up getting mixed up somewhere. You might end up getting mixed up with your own writing, and you think, oh, this is something that I wrote. You know, so free writing is something that you can look up. It's a thing, you know, among all classes of writers, where you are sort of synthesizing on the go. And, you know, and then even when you do that, remember we say plagiarizing applies to both words and ideas. You still cite the source. You still cite the source even in your draft, you know, there. And so, but the thing is, there's at least you have changed the words, and then you know that, and you've not just changing words, not just substituting synonyms, you know, for each other, but you've changed the phrasing, and especially you have integrated it into your own text, into your own idea. And so, you know, different stages are up to drafting and review, proofreading. So just to illustrate again, like I said, this is by no means a writing course. But I think before I leave this slide, I would just like to reiterate the point or emphasize the point, the last point that says read at the level you would like to write. I'm not even sure if this is sort of correct syntax, but what I mean is you are what you write how you write like what you read. So if you want to read if you want to write plagiarism-free articles, for instance, it's a good idea to start with the Scopus listed journals, which again we know that like has been said, high levels of peer review, high standards, at least so that chances that you are reading like the standard is the globally acceptable standard is there. And so without even realizing it, when you do a lot of that reading, you are imbibing style, you are imbibing structure, you are imbibing some subtle elements, right, of what it means to be able to write well without copying and pasting. And so there's this term from computer science, GIG.
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think we are running out of time a bit.
Yes.
So if we can just probably have a kind of summary of your main part of the presentation. Sure. I think there is a lot of discussion going on, and not a lot, some discussion going on in the comment section, which I would like you to respond. So
okay. So I'll just So I've got some examples here. Maybe I'll just I can put that up later on, but I think this is like the second to the last slide. So this is important, avoiding unintentional plagiarism. So this is an example. I decided to use an example from my own experience. So the P word that I used at the beginning, remember, this is missing a quote mark now, but I put it in quote marks at the beginning. And I remember, as I was just putting up the slides, this thing was lodged in my memory, and then I was like, oh, the P word. But then I got to thinking, okay, did this come from me, or did I somehow come across it somewhere in my reading before? Because I had designed this writing course for my students a few years ago, and then I went back and I realized that actually they are not my words, or it's not my phrase. And as little as this is, it's not my phrase. And so this is an example where, at the end of the day, after all is said and done, after applying all of those, fundamental, shall I say, basics, this is where, software really comes in as, great, as then checking, ex post, if there are any maybe instances of unintentional plagiarism that might have come from slipped in from somewhere, and you can just these are examples. I'm sure some of us are familiar with them. The free options, many of them ask you to just put in 1,000 or so words at a time, which I find a bit cumbersome if you're writing I don't know, a 10,000 word thing. But in any case, Google, even simple Google works well many times. Okay, so just to be aware of that. And 3 final points, since I've been asked to round up. First one is practice, second is practice, and third one, of course, is practice. The more that you read and write, and apply those principles of engaging with the material, citing. Everybody has a process, in many ways. Maybe this is what I'll end with. Anybody has a process, but, following these steps, it's possible for anyone to plagiarism proof, whatever your process is, and just practice. And practice makes perfect in that regard. So thanks very much. That will be my last slide.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. I think it's a very insightful presentation on plagiarism. So I think I'll just, we are now into the question and answer session. I have a lot of questions. Let me see. I think I can start with you, Dr. Stephen. One, Wase, I think he used one name, Wase. Yeah. So Okay, let me see if I can find. He's speaking about what happens. Don't you think plagiarism is an issue of language barrier? Like, because if we are publishing our mother tongue, probably there wouldn't be as much plagiarism from African scholars than could be. So what's your take on that?
I don't think so. That's my short answer. I don't think so. I don't think it's language barrier. I think that whatever your language of instruction is, in this sense, English, if, up until postgraduate level, you have the idea is that you have been able to comprehend, and which is why I sort of going back to the basics, the idea of comprehension. If you can read in English or French, whatever it is, and you comprehend the meaning of the text, then you should be able to apply it, in a way that doesn't, in a way that doesn't it doesn't involve plagiarism. So no, the short answer, no, the language barrier is not, except it's that you are totally new to the language, but then how would you even be understanding what you're reading? Like, I don't speak French. I wish I did. I wouldn't even attempt to write anything in French. So I would do copy and paste in French. So, but if we're assuming that that this is the language of instruction that you have been educated in, then that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, but I hope the person who asked the question has had that, which also is my take. I don't think language barrier should be a driver for plagiarism, because you can always learn to write. It's a process. Just because even there could be native speakers who still plagiarize, so that means it's not language barrier. There are a lot of people who lost their positions in Europe and even in the UK because of plagiarism. So I don't think it's an issue of language barrier. So what's your take on, he said, I think it's Daniel Hussein, he said he has read some publications in quality journals that have some grammatical issues. So what do you think is happening there?
Yeah, I know, and that can be put a bit of a damper on things. Grammar is not equal to plagiarism, unfortunately. Maybe this links to the first. This links to the first question of that's a non-native speaker problem, but it doesn't mean that you plagiarize. And some journals actually encourage you to pay for an external proofreader, but then again, nobody penalizes you on not speaking Queen's English, but
so I think that answers it. There is no penalty for grammatical mistakes. That it just says a little bit about how meticulous the researcher is, probably, but it doesn't say anything about the integrity of the research. But plagiarism question marks on the research. So I think that answers it. So, Professor Ayede, are you still with us? I have a few questions for you.
Yes, I'm right here.
Yeah, so it's still from Daniel Hussein. I think we answered that question. Okay, so he is asking about what approach will help African universities to follow some uniformity in promotion. Like what can you do to avoid, for the universities, what mechanism should universities put in place to make sure that what they are promoting their staff based on quality research that could probably discourage them from publishing in productive journals? So what strategies should African universities use?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a conversation around that going on. There was a webinar about 2 or 3 months ago by the Association of African Universities. And the issue was how to publish quality journals in Africa. Because some of the issue I raised before concerning international division of labor or discriminatory practices by editors of some journals, all of those were raised. And then added to that was the issue of the very limited number of quality journals coming from African institutions. But I would say that African universities should focus more on quality publication than on quantity. Most of the promotion guidelines that we have these days are focused on quantity. It was not always like that. I think it got to a point where they were trying to be very precise in determining whether somebody is qualified for promotion or not. And they thought that it was easier for you to say, okay, for every journal you have 5 points. So if you have 5 journals, we're able to calculate 20. So these are the challenges that led to that kind of approach. But we know that sometimes one person's contribution may be very significant. There are international organizations, but I think recently the Stanford University published this performance index of scientists across the world, the first 2%. And I think recently we got a WhatsApp message saying one of our guys in the Department of Economics was listed as #1 in business or public economics in Nigeria. So we're happy and excited about that. I'm thinking that if we really want quality, then we should move away from counting numbers into looking at the quality of work that Africans are doing. That means we need to balance quality with quantity so that we'll have people really devote their time, because good research requires dedication. It requires time. It's not something you rush. So I think that's, but I don't look forward to a uniform promotion guideline for African universities. I think what they can do, like the NUC does, is for us to have minimum benchmarks to say, for this kind of thing, this is the expectation. And many universities do have it, and the way they craft it, if you go to South African University, they have a ranking. There are national scientists so in Nigeria, we don't have that. We need to really borrow from African countries that are doing very well in that regard. And I think South Africa is a place to go, because one of the challenges that we face is the provincialization of universities. We are moving away from substance, from quality, to other issues like that should not count in the promotion process.
Okay. Thank you very much. One Ebenezer, I think Metforan, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, has a concern that the reason why Africans are struggling to publish quality research is because of what he described as neo-colonialism effect. I don't know if you're aware of that, or what you respond to. What is the effect of the Western world, like how he puts it, I think, because such that the West won't be the sole determining standard of Africa's scholar knowledge dissemination base. How do you think the West has influence on how Africans do research, and what is the way forward?
Yes, I think the West, the West is the capital of scientific knowledge today. And we have competing institutions from Asia, but as far as Africa is concerned, I think we are not yet there. And the challenge is not for us to lose our self-confidence or to be afraid of, or to feel that the table is already skewed against us. I think rather we should strive to make our impact in the debate, because knowledge production is about debate, it's about contribution, and we are also supposed to engage that process. And I think that one way we should do that is to recognize the fact that there's a plurality of outlets. Even in Western society, there are different orientations of journals in the various disciplines, and you cannot, as my colleague was talking about plagiarism noted, you can't really get in there except by practice, by doing, by engaging them. So I don't think that if you send an article to 1 or 2 journals and you are turned down, you should because of that lose courage. I give you a typical example of my experience. I sent an article to a journal. Just in my early days as a scholar, around 2001, 2002, 2003. And then I got like 4 pages of single space writing. Even there was a comment that some of your statements have no place in English syntax. That was sufficient enough to discourage. Wow. But I reworked the paper, sent it to the Canadian Journal of African Studies. And I can tell you that was the first paper with which I won an award for outstanding contribution to research in development under the Global Development Network. And I got an invitation to present the paper at a meeting in India. And the prize money for my medal was $5,000. So if I had been discouraged by the comments that I received from the I would have just thrown the paper away. So I think the idea is that for us to recognize that peer review is a standard process. It does not necessarily amount to neocolonialism. There's plurality of outlets of journals, and our own is to be taking persistent and continue to try.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think that's a very brilliant answer and encouraging at the same time. I think the young upcoming researchers will take note of that. That just because you get one rejection at a very early age doesn't mean that you keep getting rejection if you keep practicing and perfecting. I think thank you very much. So now, Dr. Abiodun, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Dr. Abiodun is the President National Nigerian Young Academy. Yeah, so I think I need to say something about Nigerian Young Academy really. So there is a question that I think you should be the one to answer from Emmanuel. He says, how can the organizers of this program introduce research mentorship to the young scholars as to avert the identified noble area journals, in brackets, regulatory journals? So I think he's trying to ask for more mentorship. How do you design that? So I think also is Daniel here? Daniel? Daniel?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so I think after Dr. Abiodun, you can also add something on that. How do you provide mentorship to younger generation?
Oh, well, okay, so the issue of mentorship is a very critical one, and it's one of the things that I think we should take quite seriously. As Dr. Temilade Shesa mentioned this when she was presenting about organizing writing workshops for her students and, placing a demand of performance, of a certain level of performance upon them. Many of us didn't enjoy this while we were learning to write, or well, at least not in the formal sense. We all found people who picked us up mostly at postgraduate level, who helped us to do these things. But I can bet you that quite a good number of academics in Nigeria today, they picked up their their undergraduate thesis. Only for those of us who wrote undergraduate thesis, many people would not want to be associated with those theses today because you did things that you just didn't know were not necessarily correct at that time. So and now to answer that question directly, I would say that the responsibility is much higher on the shoulders of the individual researcher who wants to perform at a certain level. So it's the guy who does not want to plagiarize, it's the guy who wants to do ethical research that needs to go looking for mentors. In most cases, institutions may not necessarily have a formal mentoring program that you can easily just key yourself into. You're going to have to go all out to get what you want. So that's one way to answer that. Now, an alternative is that there are several platforms out there that organize a mentorship program and programs. You mentioned the Nigerian Young Academy. We do organize mentorship. We offer mentorship opportunities from time to time. I'm aware of Author Aid that pairs early career researchers and young, aspiring researchers with more senior academics. I know that PASGA has programs in this regard and so on. So there's a ton of opportunities out there that researchers can, particularly early career researchers, can take advantage of. But the starting point is that appetite, that hunger to be mentored on the part of the younger researcher.
Thank you. Daniel, anything to add?
Yeah, I concur with what Abiodun has said, that, for example, in our country, we don't have the formal system of mentoring. I'm based in Tanzania. So what is being done is just to an individual researcher, himself or herself, to seek help. But also in this webinar, I can insist on the experienced researchers to to take a hand to help these young researchers, especially most of our office, you find that we are staying maybe 2 or 3 individuals. And if you are lucky enough to stay in one office yourself, that means you have someone, a neighbor in the next office. So try to look at these neighbors, at least ask them what they are doing, what journals are they reading, what books are they reading, what are they up to in the current scholarship. We have heard from the second presenter that you write at the level of what you read. That means if you can even track these young scholars, what they are reading, you'll be of help to them. But also encourage them to make use of the the internet. For example, these webinars which have been organized by the NASA team, they are of great help to young researchers. So at least for them to to sharpen their knowledge, but also to learn from experienced researchers. That's what I can add on this. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. Among the participants, at the beginning we said that questions will only be asked via chat. But I have one person raising their hand, so probably I'll allow it because it's only one individual. So you, Sunday Akman, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very grateful to be part of this webinar. My question goes to the third speaker, precisely I spoke on the issue of plagiarism. Now, I want to ask if it is ethical, like to write, like when you are writing your paper, and then you come up with, when you're done maybe with a clause or a sentence or sentences, okay, and then you now look for a particular author to attach as citation. Like I'm asking if it is ethical, like you just write because now you're trying to do something and then you're not getting a particular author on what you're about to write. And then when you're done writing, you find an author, one particular author, and then you attach to what you've written. Is it ethical?
Okay, yeah, that's a very practical question.
Yeah, really. I particularly.
Yeah, I think that again, short answer would be for sort of common knowledge. I don't know, widely acceptable. So I don't know, 60% of Nigerians don't have access to electricity, for instance, or the majority of Nigerians don't have access to electricity. Like sort of know that. You can put that down and then you do, all this in your draft ad ref or something. For that kind of thing, you could maybe get away with it and do it ethically. Also because by engaging with the subject, with literature as well yourself, you have come across these things and you know. But for more, for something that is more like conjecture, or something that maybe you're thinking, oh, if A said this and B said this, then maybe there is a C out there that said that. That is not acceptable. So that, that is far less acceptable. So at the end of the day, I think a corollary to that is also, even when you sort of see the reference before you write it, or before you cite it, also ensuring that you actually summarize to reflect exactly what the person, the primary author is saying. That's the corollary. So I would say whether it is cited before or after, the important thing is that the citation actually reflects accurately the idea that was, presented in the original.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you hear me? I think unfortunately, hello.
Yes, Dr. Issa,
yeah, I was fortunate that it just towards the end, that's when my internet started misbehaving. So probably fortunate, I would say, because I listened to the presentations all through. Okay, I think before I close, I'll give this information. On Wednesdays from this webinar series will continue next Wednesday. That's the 17th of March. So that seminar is going to be on, the webinar is going to be on science communication. So please do endeavor to join us if you truly enjoy this session with Professor. So I would like to thank our presenters, Professor Ayede and Dr. Season, for gracing the occasion to give us some insightful, very, very insightful presentations on quality, research quality and predatory journals and plagiarism. I think there are three components of research which, if you really, as an upcoming scientist, reckon as you do research, you sure will excel. Our double president, Dr. Abiodun, I thank you for a very insightful session we had. For all the participants who participated and who contributed with their questions, we thank you very much, and do join us next week, Wednesday, for our webinar on science communication. Thank you very much, Professor Ayede, Professor Season, Daniel, Professor Dr. Abiodun, and all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully see you again next Wednesday. I have to apologize that we ran over the time a little bit.
Thank you.
In this kind of discussions, these things happen once in a while. So
yeah, always.
All right.
Yeah.
So enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.